Hello, welcome to today's video. If you're new here, then I'm Grace and I've got two boys born 14 months apart, so just over a year between my two children, and I've wanted to film this video for a really long time now, but I wanted to make sure I got it right, and plus I've just been really busy with my two boys. I've really wanted to make this video as a bit of a follow-up to both of my birth story videos, which you might have found this one through my birth story because I'm going to try and link it. If you haven't watched those, I will leave the links to those down below. And this video is going to be talking about how I had two births without an epidural, so drug-free births. I know that the term natural birth, some people get offended by it, but this is literally just an unmedicated birth without epidural. I did have medication, which I'm going to speak about throughout this video, but basically birth without an epidural. I'm also going to be touching on how you can have a positive birth experience without having to do hypnobirthing and attending classes. I feel like there is a lot of attention on positive births, which is great, but I feel like a lot of it goes hand in hand with hypnobirthing, and I don't feel like you necessarily have to do hypnobirthing to have a positive birth experience. So I'm going to be talking about that in this video as well. So yeah, it's basically just a follow-up to my birth story. So if you like that kind of thing, then keep on watching, and this will also be helpful for you if you found this, if you are planning on having a birth without an epidural, how it is possible to achieve that, and how I done it twice. Just a quick background before I get into the main bulk of the video. I will leave timestamps for you as well, but I love birth story videos. I always have done. Even before I had my children, I found them fascinating. But basically, for as long as I can remember, I've always been interested in having a natural birth without an epidural. Now, another disclaimer before I do carry on talking is, if you want an epidural, that is absolutely fine. This isn't against epidurals, this is just my personal choice. It was always something that I wanted to try and achieve. I don't have anything against epidurals. If you want that, then that is absolutely fine, but this video probably isn't for you unless you're open-minded to hearing about the flip side of having an epidural, because I had an amazing experience with both my births. I had two totally different births, which I will touch upon in a second, but yeah, I've always wanted to have well, before I had my children, I knew that I wanted to try and have a natural birth without epidural and with as little medical intervention as possible. It just was something that I wanted for as long as I can remember. I felt like I wanted to take the trust in my body and let my body do its own thing. I was never really frightened of birth and that kind of thing, and it was just always something that I really wanted. So then obviously when I fell pregnant, I was researching it and wanting, you know, I had the birth plan and everything like that, which I will say, birth plans are a little bit like, they're great to have, but like for my first birth, it went totally flip side. They're not always that great, but it is good to have a kind of goal in mind, but just always remember with a birth plan, it might not go the way you intended, but that's a whole other story. Because I've always wanted to try for a unmedicated birth, it was just something that, like, even like as I say, even before I was pregnant, I knew that women had done it before me and women will continue to do it long after me. It was just something that I wanted to experience as well. I just felt like it was something that I wanted to try and achieve in my life if I could. I wanted to experience that sort of raw natural birth if possible. I know that that is definitely not for everyone, but it was something that I always wanted, and it was quite a big desire of mine to have that. I think that that's quite an important point to make, is that if you want it, like, your mindset is really, really powerful in having like a unmedicated birth, and especially like watching people's birth stories, which I will speak about as like a factor in how you can achieve it. It just empowered me to want to aim towards doing that myself as well. Quickly, I will just give you a little bit of background. I won't talk about it too much, just in case you've already watched my birth story videos. I've had two very different birth experiences with my two boys, but the outcome of those was both without an epidural. I had my first son Elliot in May 2020 at the start of the pandemic, which was definitely a very stressful time everywhere in the world, especially being a first-time mum about to give birth. And then 14 months later I had my second son. I was pregnant 6 months after having my first son, so I had two babies very close together. And I did have an induction with Elliot, my first son, so there was so much going on around that. And then the outcome, I still managed to have like a really amazing experience and a positive outcome from that, and birth without an epidural. And then when I had Jasper 14 months later, it was a natural spontaneous labour. It wasn't induced. So yeah, two totally different experiences. To basically summarise my two births and how different they are, is it would be, for me, I would say, like Elliot, my first son, his birth was a sprint. Even though I was induced, sometimes inductions can take days. It happened very quickly once I was on the oxytocin drip. I went straight onto the drip because my waters had already broken, because there are other slower ways of inducing you, but I went straight onto the like intravenous vein drip with the hormones. So yeah, things picked up really quickly with him, whereas with Jasper, I would compare his birth to a marathon. It was drawn out. It was a lot slower in comparison to like Elliot's birth. I went into labour completely spontaneously with him. That's how I would like wrap my births up really quickly for you. As I've briefly touched upon already, I feel like your mindset is an incredibly powerful tool when it comes to giving birth without an epidural. I swear on my life that with Elliot's birth, when I had the induction, like I was really close to having to go down for an emergency section. And when I heard that, I swear on my life that my mind, like when I heard that, like an hour later, my son was ready to be born. Like the power of your mind, I feel like, because I heard that, and like obviously if I'd have had to have the emergency C-section, fair enough, I'd have had to have it, you know, whatever. I was always open to whatever way, the safest way to get my children into this world, fine. But obviously I wouldn't have been able to experience the birth without an epidural and giving birth vaginally. And yeah, I heard like literally like in my mind, I was like, I heard that, and then an hour later, literally he was ready to, like, I was crying out, like there was pressure down there. And yeah, I feel like something switched in my brain, like something switched then, and it was like, it is now or never. Like, and obviously my body just like opened up, I relaxed, and the contractions came in really thick and fast. Obviously this isn't the case for everyone, but because my desire to have that birth was so strong, I feel like it was at that point where my mind kind of played a really crucial role in relaxing my body. And because relaxation is so important in like labour and progressing in labour, more importantly, it was just something switched at that point. So yeah, your mindset is so important if you want to achieve that birth without an epidural. It's like, I think I watched someone else's video similar to this, and they hit the nail on the head. Like if you're not really sure, like you're just a bit like, yeah, like you have got to want to do this, because I think if you don't want it badly enough, like you would end up getting an epidural. Because there were points in both of my labours where I was like, if someone would have offered it to me in that moment, I probably would have been like, give me the epidural, because it's so fast paced, it's so intense. Everyone has that transitioning phase where things are really beginning to pick up and you're doubting yourself, even just for a split second. Yeah, like you've got to really want it. But with saying all of that, I do think that knowledge is also power when it comes to giving birth naturally and with as little drugs as possible. I haven't actually said this, but I did have gas and air, which is obviously a form of drug. But with gas and air, if you're not aware of like how gas and air really works, it is something that you inhale. It's a tube that you suck on, and you're inhaling the gases, and it's a temporary, like you inhale it as you get the contraction, and it temporarily kind of, I would say, numbs you from it just relaxes you. It's got this very calm, like, I really liked the gas and air. I found it very effective. I found the gas and air very effective for just like temporarily taking a little bit of the edge of the pain away. But the second you stop having the gas and air, the pain, it, like, sorry if I know that some people don't like to use the word pain, but I'm not afraid of using the word pain. I know that, like, with hypnobirthing, you're not supposed to use that and stuff like that, but the intensity, I'll change the word. The intensity is right back there the second you stop sucking on the gas and air. So although it is a pain relief, it's a very distorted, it's almost like, again, it's kind of like a psychological thing, because it just stops, just numbs it for like a few contractions, and then the minute you take it away, it's right back there. So you're still experiencing the full sensation of the surges, the contractions, if that makes sense. Gas and air was great. I loved the gas and air. Like, I'd have another baby just to suck on some gas and air. It was really such a good pain thing. Like, it was such a good tool in my labour. Knowledge is definitely power when it comes to having an unmedicated or as natural birth as possible. Now, on saying that, that does not mean that you've got to go and enroll on a hypnobirthing course. You don't have to go and attend like antenatal classes. You can find out as much information as you want, like, by yourself. As I said, my first son was born in 2020. There were no classes. I did all of my research on YouTube. I hit up like loads of positive birth stories, which are just so empowering. I found some amazing channels. Bridget Taylor, it was by far one of my favourite ones. Like, if you search how to have a baby without an epidural, all of her videos come up. Literally, I think her videos got me through a drug-free birth, to be honest. And there were so many videos on there on induction, and just like the knowledge that I gained from her channel was just next to, like, it was incredible. Like, she's got so many videos. So if you are planning on that drug-free birth and you haven't already found her videos, you probably will have done, I would definitely recommend checking her out. I will leave the link to that channel down below. So yeah, you don't have to do hypnobirthing. Like, as I said in the intro, I feel like a lot of positive birth stories, they are linked to hypnobirthing. I didn't do any hypnobirthing. I didn't do any of the, like, they have a lot of like mantras, which if you think that will work for you, that is perfect. But you don't have to do that to have a positive birth at all. Like, and as I said, like, I think with hypnobirthing, you don't use the words contractions and you don't use the word pain, and, you know, you can write all that down, which is fine. But I don't feel like you have to do any of those things to have a positive birth. You can equip yourself with so much knowledge, just like from your phone, YouTube, books, if you want. You know how you're going to enrich yourself with the knowledge you need to get through a drug-free birth. And again, I will just emphasise how useful it is to watch those positive birth stories, because they're just so empowering. As I mentioned, I loved them, and they remain one of my favourite videos to this day to watch, and I think they always will, because just watching people's like amazing experiences are just so inspiring. Watching these women hit up lots of positive birth stories on YouTube, even on Instagram. There's loads of stuff like that now. Another thing that always got me through birth without an epidural was the knowledge that my mum had done this, and her mum had done this, and my mum's sisters had done this, and women in our family throughout the generations have birthed children like as drug-free as possible, and women like centuries, like as like from day dot. The knowledge that our bodies were literally built to do this, and I found it such an empowering thought that, like, my body will literally birth a child for me without me, it's grown this baby, and it will birth a child for me, like, without me having to, it's just such an incredible experience, and I just really wanted to get it as natural as possible. I wanted to be able to trust my body and my instincts as much as I could, really. And I knew that, like, because I'd researched epidurals and stuff, I knew that an epidural would change a lot of that for me. Really wanted to experience birth that, like, in a certain way. without the epidural, and knowing that I trusted my instincts and just let my body do what it was supposed to do, designed to do. I do think that it helps that I am a very determined person. Like I've said so many times, I've just always wanted to do this. So if you want something badly enough, you will do it. Like, seriously, that's all you need. That's enough. Like, obviously, like, if things go wrong, it's different. There are always like things that could go wrong, but that's without, like, you can't control them. Like, as much as you can control all these things, like your knowledge, your determination, your strength, like you can totally do it. If you don't want it badly enough, it's going to be harder to achieve, I think. So you've got to truly understand the reasoning why you want to get this birth without an epidural. Banishing fear is also completely an essential tool for you to get that drug-free birth, because fear is going to prevent you from relaxing. It's also going to creep in, as I said, like in those transitional phases of labour, like you're going to like question yourself. But if you're not afraid of giving birth, then you are going to just sail through it. I personally have never been afraid of giving birth. There were points in my like pre-labour where I was kind of told something by a midwife that frightened me, but up to that point I never had been. I know that as a first time mum, like giving birth, there is always going to be that fear of the unknown, and you can never quite get rid of that. And I think that's why in the end I was a little bit frightened. That was also on top of what that midwife had said to me. But you've got to try and get rid of as much fear like from your brain as possible, because I think that sometimes when fear creeps in, it can stop you from being calm. And obviously, as I've said, keeping calm is really essential for your labour to progress in the right direction. And the last thing that you can do to achieve that drug-free, epidural-free birth is to let your birth partner know all your reasonings, get them on board with why you want this, and encourage them to be your cheerleader throughout this experience, because it's going to be an intense one. Birth is just so powerful. It's such a strong, like, it's just so overwhelmingly powerful, whatever way you have it. But I think like a drug-free birth, both times that I've had it, they're so intense. Like, and I do personally feel like when I had the induction that the medical profession do sort of push you to have an epidural. Again, this could be a whole story for another day. But I was asked several times at the start of my induction, did I want an epidural? And I didn't even have any pain. Like, I didn't even have a stomach ache at that point. And I was asked twice by a doctor and a midwife, and like nothing was even going on. So I didn't even really get a chance, like, even though I'd said that I don't want an epidural, and one of the midwives, the thing that they said was to reconsider getting an epidural if I'd ruled it out, which really frightened me at the last hurdle, and I was quite annoyed about that. That wasn't the best part of my birth experience, but yeah, I do speak about that in my birth story. But yeah, just get everyone on board with not, you know, what you want. Like, it's at the end of the day, it's your birth experience, and it's one day in your life that you'll never get back. And another thing I think that made me really want this is because you don't get many shots at giving birth, and if you want it a certain way, you really, it is within your power to achieve that. And you know, if you want it badly enough, I think that you totally can achieve it. Like, having my first child on an induction without an epidural is pretty much a very good achievement. So that always led me in good stead for my next baby. Like, I knew that as long as nothing went badly wrong, I'd be able to do it again. It's just a magical, empowering experience, and I feel so utterly grateful that I had two really good positive birth experiences. They were just so amazing. Both, like, it literally gives me goosebumps thinking about the day that both my sons were born, and that I managed, that, you know, I had enough strength in me to birthed these children in exactly the way that I wanted to. I felt really thankful for that. And as I've, like, I would have had the C-section if I ever had to, but I really was very grateful to get the experience that I wanted, and it was so amazing. And it's a day in your life that, you don't get many shots at doing. To get to do it the way that I wanted to, like, was so fulfilling, and I'm really grateful that I was able to manage that. And I have 2 beautiful sons for the rest of my life, and knowing that the day they entered the world was so positive is just worth all of the intensity of the day of their birth. So yeah, you can totally achieve a drug-free, epidural-free birth as a first-time mum, as a second-time mum. You can totally do it. Like, whether you've not had it before or if this is your first time, equip yourself with all the things that I've spoken about in this video, and that is basically how I had my 2 natural births. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you do like content all about mum life, then please do hit subscribe if you're not already. If you want to see more of me talk about my birth experiences, leave me a comment, because I am so interested in talking about it. I love to relive the day that my sons were born. I love to watch other people's experiences. I'm going to stop talking now because I've been talking for a very long time, and thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.